For the chemical and physical changes lab, you're going to want to make sure to read through it carefully. Remember that changes can either be classified as a physical or a chemical change. When we have a physical change, the physical properties of a substance, such as its size, its shape, its density, might be altered, but overall the chemical composition remains the same and no new substance is formed. So a good example of a physical change is when we change from a solid to a liquid to a gas for water. A good example of a chemical change is when we do something like take water and actually break it into its separate pieces. So, for example, the water vapor here, notice that the molecules, when they go from the liquid state to the water state, notice that the molecules here and here still look exactly alike. But when we have a chemical change, such as taking water and making water, which is happening here, or if we were to break it apart, if we were to have the arrow go the opposite direction, notice how the atoms and molecules are different here. So when we end, we have molecules of water, but when we started in this chemical reaction here, we had a molecule of hydrogen, 2 molecules of hydrogen, and we had 1 molecule of oxygen. And so that is a key component that a chemical change has occurred, is notice that if I could see these atoms and molecules, that when we have a physical change, the atoms and molecules are the same at the beginning and the end, but if we have a chemical change like we do in this image here, then the molecules that we have at the beginning and at the end are different from one another. So when we are looking at something like a chemical change, we also call these chemical reactions. And so we look for those signs that we've talked about in our previous labs, including a change in color, the formation of a precipitate, the production or release of a gas, and the change in temperature. So it's important that we distinguish between physical and chemical changes. We are also going to learn to distinguish the difference between a pure substance and a mixture. So pure substances are going to be elements and compounds, whereas mixtures are a mixture of different materials. And so we're going to learn about how to classify material as well. So just remember, pure substances are elements or compounds that are made up of just one type of matter, whereas a mixture, basically they're physically combined, where we've got 2 or more pure substances that are physically combined there. And we can usually separate them by physical means, either by evaporating a liquid and leaving the solid, perhaps by filtering out a solid, or by distillation. And these are all some things that we'll practice in the laboratory. So if you would, please pause. Take a minute to fill in the 2 pre-lab questions to get yourself prepared for our lab. You'll notice that I will first demo a small portion, and then there are several parts that you'll be completing at lab tables for the lab. So take a minute, read through that. The directions are laid out step by step, so read through part 1, which involves paper. You'll see part 2 requires water, sodium chloride, and silver nitrate. Part 3 requires magnesium hydrochloric acid and fire. Please make sure to call me over when you are ready to turn on the Bunsen burner, and I will teach you and help you with that. Part 4 includes copper sulfate, pentahydrate, and again, a heat source. For us, we are going to be holding that test tube again over a Bunsen burner flame. And then finally, we have our data table where you'll write down detailed observations. So please be very specific about things that you have and you see happening. And then finally, P, you will label a P if this is a physical change, and you will label a C if this is a chemical change.